I'd probably been directing for 10 years, maybe, and I realized that how important my background as an assistant director was to being a producer and a director. And because I can look across a soundstage or I can look across the set and I can go, I can see exactly what people are standing there and what their body language is. And I know the exact conversation they're having because I've been in that. And I also know, I think there's a benefit because grew up on the set, so to speak. When I ask for something as a producer and director, I know exactly what I'm asking for. And what I mean by that is that we have a responsibility to not only deliver something creatively that's fantastic, but we also have a responsibility to the budget and the schedule.
Yep.
And so I know if I say, hey, I want to do this, I already know the response that I'm going to get because people are like, oh shit, you're asking for a lot. But I already know what it takes to do it, right? And I already know how to accomplish it. I don't try to tell people how to do it. I say it, and then I trust the people that are doing it, come up. But then when there's roadblocks, I can go, look, here's how we navigate that. We turn this corner, we do this, because I've done it before. I've done it for other directors when I was an AD. So I know how to accomplish it. So I know when I'm asking for something, whether big or small, I know exactly what it entails.
Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is a podcast on directing for anybody that's quite simply ever watched anything. Pete converses with a wide range of fellow directors, writers, actors, showrunners, producers, executives, and more on a journey to determine just what makes a good director and why we'll always need stories. Visit www.petechatmon.com to get your official director's chair wear, hoodies, hats, jackets, mugs, and other swag, and learn more about your host.
All right. What's up, people? Welcome to episode 49 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon. In our new format, this will complete season 3. We will be back with season 4 as soon as possible. We're going to take a little break. We've rolled upon summer. Tomorrow is my birthday. And so with that, going to take a little trip, try and rejuvenate and regroup and, do all the stuff that happens and then come back at y'all with a lot of new episodes for season 4. I think I already know who the premiere episode will be, but I ain't going to say it. But it'll be dope. It'll be a great conversation and probably one that a lot of you will get to enjoy because maybe it's not the kind of interview that happens often. Also, I think I might try and take advantage of this unfortunate timing of the strike and see if I can't really lean into directors. I don't know. But I really feel like that might be the director-heavy season because people are not at work and I might be able to get some folks that I can't normally lock in due to shooting schedules to sit down and Zoom with your boy. So stay tuned on that. But this right now is episode 49. It is starring my man, Anton Cropper, director, producer, came up as an AD, came up as a hustler, really, a creative in figuring out how to find a spot in a variety of different industries from music to film to TV. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy the conversation that we had. I feel it's a great way to conclude season 3. But a little bit more about Anton. He was born in Sweden, came up in LA, and just with that mixture right there, I think you have a unique perspective from which to view the game and the world and whatnot. I think he is the director who has done the most episodes of Blackish, if I'm not mistaken. He just did a feature film called Fantasy Football with Marseille Martin. He's known for Monk, Suits. He was my producing director on Long Slow Exhale. The man is everywhere. So I hope you enjoy the interview. In the meantime, as far as updates from me, quite honestly, not much to report, not gonna lie. I've just really been trying to spend time with family. And that is much to report. But I'm talking about, in the world of like, oh, I'm working on this and I'm doing that. No, not much to report in that. Much happier to be spending time reconnecting with fam. And I urge folks to do that if you're on strike and you have the time or, in general, carve out that time because it's so valuable. But yeah, nothing really more to report. I've got some writing to get done. I'm going to make a little special trip to connect with my co-writer again on a non-sanctioned project, something that is a passion project that we've been working on our own for a while. I'm going to do that in a couple weeks. And yeah, that's really it. Just trying to watch as many things as I can and stay sharp and find whatever can creatively inspire me to see the world differently and anew before hopping back into whatever life will be like when the strike concludes. So without further ado, let's dive into episode 49 with my man, Anton Cropper.
Roll sound.
Speed.
The interview. Take one.
All right, here we are, folks, welcoming Anton Cropper to the podcast.
What's up?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You know, happy to be here. Happy to be joining this illustrious group of people that you've spoken with. So I'm very honored.
Oh man, I appreciate it. I feel like it's a Saturday morning, so that this is a busy brother. You got to get them when you can, you know. I'll also say this is one of the things that I always appreciate, man. And it's not on this for the people watching on YouTube, but I think I've been on a bunch of meetings, and your Zoom handle, if I'm not mistaken, was that motherfucker.
Yeah, pretty much that motherfucker. Because sometimes you just gotta let people know who walks in the room. You know, so it's funny. It started. You know, it wasn't really. I mean, I'd like to say it was all ego, but I like to believe I don't have a lot of ego. So it was really one of those things where I named my phone, you know, for like airdrop, you know, for just trading information. My phone was named that motherfucker. So
Right.
when the pandemic hit, and everybody started doing Zoom meetings, it automatically fit my device name and
Right.
placed it on there. And to be 100% honest, I really just didn't know how to change it. And so then I would just go, I was like, well, I mean, but it was nothing I was ever like, I never shied away from it either. You know, I was just like,
Right.
all right, well, good, I'm just that motherfucker then. So, and I'm like, it fits. If it's appropriate, then cool. If it works, and it's been interesting. It's interesting because there's been, I don't really change it for anyone. And now my iPad though, because I changed iPads, now it says my name, and I'm thinking about changing it back to that motherfucker. But
well, I mean, it's a weird thing. We could probably talk about it later, but it's like when you're out here moving through white spaces, a lot of times, there's a calibration. You know what I mean? That happens on some level. And so I remember looking on the Zoom, I'm in the meeting, I'm looking at the faces. I'm like, okay, this motherfucker. All right. But so you were born in Sweden. How, like, what's your early beginnings, man?
my mom, I mean, I'll go way back before me. My mom and dad met here in LA. And so my dad's from Chicago. My mom's from Sweden. Met in LA, got married, had my sister, moved to Sweden, had me, then moved back to LA. And so I spent my first 5 years in Sweden, and then used to go back about every other summer, sometimes 3 years, but about every other summer, I'd go back and spend summers in Sweden. My mom's entire family's there. So everyone, she's pretty much the only one outside of Sweden, besides, one or two other people. But yeah, but I grew up in LA, technically grew up in Inglewood, 2 blocks from LA. So,
and do you have like or how did that affect your worldview, right? Was it like some Kobe growing up in Italy kind of deal? Or like, and I know you didn't grow up there, but like just even going in and out of these different environments, like did that impact your?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that environment affects people, right?
Mhm.
Like, I realize that, right now he may not be the most popular person and has said, possibly some questionable things. I try not to get overly involved in social media things or political things from other people or whatever. But, Kanye West has a great quote on one of his songs: "Everything I'm not makes me everything I am."
Mhm.
And, I'm a big believer in that, because it's flipping it, where, yeah, everything I am makes me everything I am, but everything I'm not also does.
Mhm.
So I did not grow up wealthy.
Mhm.
I did not grow up, I started working when I was 14 years old. But all of these things, my parents did a great job of providing other points of view for me. I never ever felt like we were poor, but as I got older, I realized, oh shit, like, yeah, no, I couldn't get those Jordans. I can get those jeans. Or I can get that. I found ways to get them on my own.
Right.
That's just us on the grind and said, oh, well, then I got to work, or I got to put in time. I got to do this. I got to do whatever. But to answer that question, yeah, I mean, going to Sweden, having that perspective, my mom would make me go. I'd be kicking and screaming. She'd drag me to the airport.
Right.
But those, 2 months were up in Sweden. I'd be like, damn, I don't want to go back to LA,
Right.
and I think that a lot of times, especially as Black Americans, and I don't want to overly generalize, but a lot of times we don't get to go out and see other parts of the world, or we don't take the initiative to make travel a priority. And
Right.
what ends up happening when you travel, you know, our biggest issues, are cultural differences as a society, right? We don't accept other people's culture, which is what starts the clash. We
Right.
believe it's all about skin tone, which a lot of it is, but it's really culture, right? Like, so people feel like they have to speak differently, and all groups actually do it. Code switching. People feel like they have to act a different way, talk a different way, look a different way. Can't be that motherfucker on Zoom.
Right. Right.
Et cetera, because of the fact that culturally we're different. But when you travel, you learn to understand and accept people's cultures and realize that might not be for you, or you might not sound like that, or you might not look like that, or you might not like that music, and they may not like what you like, but that doesn't mean you can't accept each other as people.
Right. Right.
So,
But that's a dope thing to get, in your blood early, especially in what we do in this industry, and telling stories and having empathy and insight into other walks of life and worldviews. What was the first story that you remember having an impact on you where you're like, that really made me look at a situation differently? Or
I mean, story in terms of a movie or film or play or something. I mean, I've never thought about it, to be honest. My dad was a still photographer and a camera assistant.
Mhm.
He worked in the TV and film business, but he wasn't a producer or director. It wasn't like he was high up on the totem pole. He was a camera assistant. He was a second AC and a loader, and he was happy with that. He enjoyed that. So I used to go to sets like Dallas and Moonlighting, Jazz Singer, all these things way back, and just as a little kid, and I never was like enamored by the concept of filmmaking. But I was always enamored by the idea of storytelling. Like, my dad was a great storyteller. My uncle was a great storyteller. And when I think about, I don't think I've ever been asked this question, so I don't know if you really made me dig deep down inside. I'm going to embarrass myself a little. Second grade, I played the lion in Wizard of Oz.
All
So
right.
I had a giant curly, it wasn't a proper afro, but it was like, those big old giant curls. And I just remember, like, my teachers told my mom, don't let him cut his hair, just let him keep growing it, so I could just be the mane of the lion or whatever.
Right.
And point being is, though, I do remember the impact. I remember being on stage, and I remember the impact of the audience and what
Right.
that felt like, and that we were telling a story that had been told many times, and of course they were just cheering because we were their little kids and whatever. I'm sure it sucked, but I don't know, man. Hip hop influenced me greatly. I mean, that
Yeah.
story, early hip hop was all about storytelling, right? That influenced me greatly. I was also a tour manager. I tour managed Warren G for a while, and like, I remember being on stage and feeling that energy, even though I wasn't on stage. I was, next to stage. So I think it's just the impact that both, telling stories, music, anything, all of the things that we do, the way that people respond
Right.
is I remember most.
So what was your path to starting a career in the industry?
Is it a career? I got there yet.
or
Shit.
shit.
I'm still working at this.
That's true. At what point do you call it a career? I guess after when they give you an award or for a
Yo,
lifetime
man.
achievement, at that point you can say it's
Yes. I guess it is a career, but sometimes it never feels like it because, the saying of you're only as good as your last job, there's
Right.
some truth to that, and I approach every single thing I do like it's my first one and my last one. So, but my path, I guess, is a little bit different than most. I didn't go to film school. I didn't grow up. Again, this part, I can't remember a specific story or movie that affected me because I didn't grow up with the concept of I want to make movies or I want to make TV. I always, this business chose me. when I was in high school, my sister's boyfriend at the time started a music video production company, and I worked some weekends. And within that, we did an Ice Cube video. I was a production assistant. I didn't know anything.
Okay.
It was like,
What song? What video?
it was, man, it was when they kidnapped the dad and threw him in the trunk. I should know the name, but I don't. I don't remember the name. I have to look it up. But it was off his first solo album.
Okay.
Being from LA. So I worked on that video. It was like third job. The first AD, the first assistant director walks up to me and at the end of the shoot and goes, next video I do, I want you to be my second AD. And by this time I think I was 18. Yeah, I think I was 18. And he said, I said, I don't know what a second AD does.
Right.
And he said, do what you did today and you'll be fine. I said, all right. And the next week he called me for King T and the Alcoholics. The Alcoholics first song featuring King T. And it was a shit show, true to form. 8 o'clock in the morning, they're drinking Thunderbird and Kool-Aid, Mad Dog 2020. And by 2 o'clock in the morning, everyone's fucked up,
Right.
But within a year from that, I started, when I was 19, I was first ADing music videos, and I was going to Cal State Dominguez. I think I was 19, maybe 20. And it got to the point where I was a political science major. And it was, do I take my test on Friday? Or do I do this Master P video 7 days at $1,000 a day cash?
Right.
Now, this is the early 90s. I'm, 19, 20 years old,
Right.
$7,000, 7 days of work. I'm like, I'm taking that test some other time.
Right.
And just, I never looked back. And then from there, it sort of, I decided to get out of the music video game. I did a movie called The Show. Russell Simmons presents The Show with Brian Robbins, with Naughty by Nature, Run DMC.
Yeah.
That's how Warren and I got tight. I brought the Dog Pound into the movie because at that time I'd been doing all these videos and I was super tight with them and Snoop. And then I decided, then I was at a point where I was tour manager with Warren. I had done some stuff with Wu-Tang and the Five Footers. And, again, Snoop, Death Row had kind of fallen apart. And we were talking about starting a label. And I just kind of decided that wasn't the road I wanted to take.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I made a phone call. And I started over. I went back being a production assistant on a TV show called All That. And I went from, I was making $400 a week. So I went from making, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a day to, it wasn't working every day.
Right.
It wasn't that, but, working 7-10 days a month to making $400 a week. And that became the journey. I became a second AD, a first AD, and then eventually direct and producing.
So to make that pivot from music videos into television, not to get into your finances, but had you been smart with your money and were you in a position? Okay.
I was the dude. Look, I grew up in LA. I went to Westchester. It was always fun. We always had a good time. I was my nicknames, I'm somewhat embarrassed to say, but which is why my wife would not go out with me at the time at all, because my nicknames were Spotlight and Hollywood.
Right.
And so that tells you anything. So, I was the dude, literally, I'd wake up in the morning and instead of washing clothes, I would go to Nordstrom's and buy something to wear that day.
Right.
I would do that. Right. I think I bought my first brand new car when I was 20 or 21, whatever. And it was like, I was living like, there was no tomorrow. And I think part of that is that mentality of, being in LA, growing up in the 90s in LA when shit was hot. And by hot, I mean, like you didn't know if you were making it to the next day or not.
That's what I was going to ask you too, because you said Death Row was kind of going down, but this was like the height of the East Coast, West Coast shit, right?
Absolutely.
And it was you didn't know what was what.
Yeah. And this is 94, 95, 96, or early, even 92, 93. Like I did some first video. I didn't direct any of them, but I was working as a D, or, I was working on them. And yeah, I was fortunate where, again, I didn't grow up. You grow up in LA sometimes, and in that era, you were just guilty by affiliation, by the neighborhood you lived in, the school you went to, et cetera, et cetera. I was not a gangster. I was not a gangbanger, at all. That was not my thing. I was into cars and still am. But if you're on the bus And some dudes get on and they go, what high school do you go to? You
Right.
are automatically guilty by association. And those were my friends,
Right.
but I knew when to leave. I knew
Right.
when to not be there. I did not go find the trouble. I knew like instead, like, yo, we cool, but y'all not coming kicking into my house all day, every day,
Right.
because someone can drive by and shoot my house up. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think there, there was a little bit, and again, not having grown up, again, I never felt like we were lacking, but having surplus income
Mm-hmm.
and not being, and it's a trap that a lot of people fall into at that age. And I didn't get a lot of money. I can't imagine these NBA players, these rappers, or, everybody, getting millions of dollars. But I mean, at
Right.
least hopefully they have some sort of structure or, a team in place. I didn't, it was just me.
Yeah. And most of them don't. I mean, I just read, I think I read that Giannis had $250,000 in like 50 different banks because he didn't know he was going by the FDIC insurance, max if a bank were to collapse, but he didn't know, he didn't have any support or help or know how to invest his money. I was like, yo, that's, I mean, at least that's smart. If you don't know shit.
I get it. Like he looked, at least he read and thought he was doing
right.
something. And again, I wasn't making that type of money, obviously, but for me still, it was, making 10 grand a month or, whatever at that age for me was a lot.
Yeah.
I think again, everything I'm not makes me everything I am. Right. So
right.
those experiences though made me learn. Like I'm just very candid, when I did start dating my wife, I remember we went to the mall. I was like, yo, went to Westside Pavilion, went to Charles David, bought some shoes, went to shopping, whatever, And yeah, I had a, fly new car, everything. And on the way home, she's like, oh, let's stop and get something to eat. And I was like, oh, shit. We just spit all the money, we just went shopping,
Right, right.
But that's a mentality then that I had to overcome and really understand that, this is a long-term game. And then how do we find financial freedom and financial responsibility? Because at the end of the day, even though I'm very blessed and fortunate to now be in a position that I'm in, there's still other people that are making tons of money off of what we do. People look at us like, oh, we're doing all right. Yeah,
right.
But we're a drop in the bucket,
right.
And those people are not looking out for our interests whatsoever. And a lot of times the tools that are available to us have been available to other people for hundreds of years. So we don't have that same foundation. We're 60 years in, basically. And that 60 years in isn't even a true 60 because of the fact that that's the, it's like Juneteenth, 1863. No, I didn't have it to 1865. Right. So, but the real truth is that, civil rights movement was in the 60s. But when did we start actually benefiting from it?
Right.
And then what ended up happening was in the 70s and, late 60s and early 70s, it was like, yo, you want to celebrate. So you're not, again, being financially smart. Then we're held back by like the Federal Housing Act. We're held back by so many different things that have been built by definition to not allow us to succeed.
Right.
And so we don't have a lot of times that foundation and that head start that other people have for hundreds of years. So we really got a lot of, learning to do.
And then, and then from every corner, they'll put the onus on, oh, y'all don't know what to do. You got your priorities in the wrong place. And it's like, y'all, I've been trying to shake these zombies off of me for all my life. They coming from every direction.
Correct. And also too, the thing is too, like also culturally, and this is the thing about, so I don't know if this is the direction we're supposed to be going.
Hey, this is all good, man.
So,
this is all good.
We as Black Americans, African Americans, West Indian Americans, anyone derived from slave trade that is in America, right?
Yeah.
We were taught to assimilate, to denounce who we are, what we are, where we came from. If you had someone that spoke the same language as you were separated, beaten, tortured if you spoke to that person in your native tongue.
Right.
Part of what I'm getting at is this. I get, look, my flossiness, of when I did get some money,
Right.
And people, again, culture. We have in our DNA, we had gold at our disposal. We took animals, feathers, hides, we beautified them. We're a proud people of our appearance,
Right.
and that still runs through us. We still wear gold chains and everything.
Right.
And we want to symbolize our success. And as a culture, we do it differently than other cultures, right? But we've been taught that that's a problem, that there's a flaw with it or a fault, or like, oh, you spend all your money on something that makes you shine when you ain't got nothing else. And that's true. That's
Right.
backwards.
Right.
But when you do have something else, you can still shine and be proud of
Right.
it.
Trying to level it out. That's
Yeah.
the
Priorities.
I'm always thinking about the next gold chain. So I get it. So from what I see from my lovely assistant Jada, who does the research and puts a little document together. So for all that, you did 29 episodes as stage manager. What's that job?
All right. So, well, in the IMDb does not allow you to have a first stage manager or second stage manager category. I was a second stage manager. They lump it all together as stage manager. And basically, it's like an assistant director, but different because it's a multi-camera platform. Multi-camera platform works where you are generally on Monday, you do a table read for the writers. They rewrite. Tuesday, you start rehearsing. Wednesday, you rehearse. By the end of day Wednesday, you do a blocking for the writers so they can also see it on its feet. By Thursday, you start taping. On Friday, you're taping. You also have a live audience. The
Right.
stage manager, second stage manager, I was in charge of like basically wrangling the actors, getting their in and out of hair and makeup. Or all that, I was also in charge of the music groups and the talent that we always like guest talent. So I would be the liaison for all the music acts that came through. It's just, again, it's sort of, it's very similar to what a second assistant director does.
Right.
But our difference is because of the fact that we're not filming every single day, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, honestly, that stage managing was like, I had friends and they got me to do it. My first day, I was like, yo, this is all I'm supposed to do. I was like, this with my eyes closed and hands tied behind my back.
Right.
Is that director? And,
Right.
I think that stage managing, it's a different tool. I think it's a lot less intense than being an assistant director.
Uh-huh. It's interesting though. It sounds like, there's an unexpected benefit of like the route you took, right? Because doing those videos because I did a couple music videos and I was like, I can't fucking do it no more. You know what I mean? And I was just like, the lack of respect for time, the personalities that you're dealing with were just kind of crazy and what I was doing. And I was just like, man, but like having been in that world and then coming to TV, a lot of what you'd see, you'd be like, oh, this is nothing. Like everybody's here on time, more or less. Like it's just, now getting them from the trailer to the set. So, and then also it sounds like the creative and genuine sense of hustle you had, that's something that you can apply anywhere. How did you move from being a stage manager to going to that, second AD and then that first AD position on like That Was Then and the Brothers Garcia and 6 Feet Under and stuff like that?
I mean, one, I'd say, I think you're 100% correct. It was a few years ago that I didn't realize how important I'd probably been directing for 10 years, maybe, and I realized that how important my background as an assistant director was to being a producer and a director. And because I can look across a soundstage or I can look across the set and I can go, I can see exactly what people are standing there and what their body language is. And I know the exact conversation they're having because I've been in that. And I also know, I think there's a benefit because I grew up on the set, so to speak. When I ask for something as a producer and director, I know exactly what I'm asking for. And what I mean by that is that we have a responsibility to not only deliver something creatively that's fantastic, but we also have a responsibility to the budget and the schedule.
Yep.
And so I know if I say, hey, I want to do this, I already know the response that I'm going to get because people are like, oh shit, you're asking for a lot. But I already know what it takes to do it, right? And I already know how to accomplish it. I don't try to tell people how to do it. I say it. And then I trust the people that are doing it, come up. But then when there's roadblocks, I can go, look, here's how we navigate that. We turn this corner, we do this, because I've done it before. I've
Right.
done it for other directors when I was an AD. So I know
Right.
how to accomplish it. So I know when I'm asking for something, whether big or small, I know exactly what it entails. But for the transition question I was really, again, it's a hustle, right? I mean, when I was doing music videos, I had friends who would like, yo, put me on because they saw I started making money, and they're like, put
Right.
me on. I'm like, all right, well, are you going to be in downtown LA at 5 a.m. shooting up dog shit in an alley with me? Because
Right.
that's what I do.
Right.
And then you'll stay there till 2 a.m. and be the last person standing there when the crackheads are out or
Right.
motherfuckers are shooting up with heroin and everything else. And you got to be the last dude watching to make sure the truck leaves.
Yeah.
So I'd say like, cool, I'm in a position already, at 18, 19 years old where I could put you on. So I
Right.
put them on 5 o'clock in the morning, motherfuckers wouldn't show up.
Right.
So I'm like, yo, I can't help you help yourself if you
Right.
don't want, but so eventually I started, I went on to, I was always grateful for the position I was in while I was in it. And I was very blessed that I was able to transition to the next stage without any delays. When I was a second AD, I was happy being a second AD.
Right.
Not being happy being a second AD, I was able to transition to a first AD. Someone was there to trust me. Same
Can I
thing with
ask what was it that you noticed that made your happiness meter dwindle a little bit?
you know what? I'm very much the type of person where once I've accomplished something or done it a few times or whatever, I realize that I lose interest. And even when I was, towards the end of my first AD career, I felt myself working at 85% of my ability. And I was doing both. I was firsting and directing. And I really had kind of like, I was losing interest in being a first AD. And, but a producer friend who I'd been working for, and I was very upfront about it. I was like, I don't feel like I'm on that same point, And he
Right.
said, I'll tell you, 85% of you is better than 100% of everyone else. So I was like, well, that's very flattering, but
Yeah.
that's the reality, right? I would just feel like, all right, I've been here, done this, I've mastered it. And I'm the same way now, even with directing to a certain extent. Like, I think that's why I do comedy, I do action, I do drama, I do sci-fi, I've done half hour, I've done 1 hour. I just did my first movie, which was a different animal, and
Right.
so I need constant stimulation.
Right. Right. So what do you consider your first? Let me ask this differently, because you did Everybody Hates Chris. Was that
Yep.
but then you also did Monk, and you were like first AD and director. Like, what do you consider like your first job as a director? Because I know sometimes
It was
people.
Monk.
It was Monk.
It was
Okay.
Monk. Yeah. My first job as a director was '07, Monk. And Randy Ziss, the executive producer, who I consider one of my mentors, he gave me my shot, and he had asked me, and this is the thing too, people be patient because it was season 3. He asked me, we're scouting in a van. I remember exactly where we were, just outside of downtown. We were just shooting shit. And he was like, yeah, so what do you want to do? And I was very a part of Monk. Like, I don't just do a schedule as a
Right.
first. I cared about what the final product was. My job was to make the best episode possible as an AD. So I would bend over backwards to figure it out. But so he said to me, he said, what do you want to do? I said, I think I want to direct. It was never like, it was always there in the back of my mind. But again, I was
Right.
never like, when I was a second AD, it wasn't like, yo, I'm going to be a big time director. It was just like, I'm good being a second AD.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, really? He looked at me and said, I would think you want to produce. And I looked at him, I said, well, I already do that. So, I was like, I'll do that right here, right now.
Right.
I don't have a title, but and eventually I did get the title on Monk. I did get a producing title on Monk, but and then it took a year and a half after that conversation. And he would come up to me, I not an ask. He called to me and said, I'm still working on it. I haven't forgotten this. All right, cool. And honestly, that helped me stay on that show as a first AD, knowing that was coming. But I didn't ask. And he'd come up and said, okay, I got this. I got the studio approval. Okay, I got this. And it took a year and a half. What happened was we were on set one day, one of the actors, there was a situation where there was a script issue and they were trying to figure it out and the director couldn't really explain it. And, it's 35 minutes and we just stand there talking. And, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes because, there's a hierarchy and,
Right.
it wasn't my place. But eventually they reached a standstill. And I just said, listen, here's what it is. In this scene back there, this happened, what happens now, boom, boom, and how it that relates to is this thing over here, and boom, 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 boom. Because they needed it. Like we were just
Right.
dead in the water.
Right.
And one of the actors who was very tough on directors, I love him to death, but very tough on directors. And I learned a lot from him watching how he was with directors. He went to Ravi and said, how come Anton's not directing? And that was the final thing that gave the green light, the cast being like, yo, and then never looked back. And that was that. But Everybody Hates Chris was my first thing outside
Yeah.
of home. But
That's why I was
5 episodes a month though,
Right.
So it's like it became, but Everybody Hates Chris. And that was again one of the directors who had directed on Look, who I was, very tight with because again, I busted my ass to make sure they got what they needed. He was the producing director on it. And once I did the Look, he was like, yo, I can get you a slot over here.
I
was
got
like,
what I need to bring you in now. And
bingo.
That's what I was going for too. Cause I know I did the directing, I did 4 directing programs. I shadowed on like 10 shows and it took a handful of shows before I got a show that I hadn't shadowed on.
Yeah.
And I kind of have a little bit of a distinction myself where it's like, no, this is the first one where I went in that shit and like got the job. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was handing in a receipt or something.
But let's just be very clear. You got the job on the other jobs before, even though you may have shadowed because you put in the work and you put in the time. Like that episode a month was not handed to me. That was not a, oh, we want you to stay. So here's an episode.
True.
It was earned by the hard work I did as a first AD. And your episodes were earned by the time you put in through the programs, shadowing, showing up and being there. So you might have got something that you feel like was on your own merit, but those episodes were on your merit because I guarantee you right now, there's other people that were in the same class as you,
no
the
doubt,
same exact thing that are not sitting here where you are.
Right. Nah, real talk. You brought it up, so I want to ask you about this. If you were to distill what this actor would do to directors that were not on their game, like what is it that you were noticing and what is it that the directors could have been doing better?
I'll never forget a moment early on. I hadn't been on the show long and where the director, they were blocking the scene, private rehearsal, blocking the scene, so they were trying to figure it out. And the director said, well, I need you to cross over here at this line so that the camera can do this.
Right.
And the actor said, my job is to figure out the performance and what works for this scene. Your job is to capture it. Do not tell me blocking based on what you need the camera to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do not tell me what my performance should be because you have a special shot in mind or because of something else. And it wasn't quite this cordial. Look, there's a part where, there are times where I ask actors to do something for the camera, right? Sometimes you need that. You need a motivation or you need something else or you have something planned.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to be conscious. To me, performance comes first.
Yeah.
So if I have something planned that doesn't, and the blocking and staging plan, what that really did was it really taught me, when I go and I take a script, the first thing I do, I don't think about the camera one bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think about what do I believe the character would do in this moment. And I go into the space. If this is the set, I'm going to the space and I'm thinking like, would the character be shooting pool? Would they sit on the pool table? Would they be sitting at my bar? Would they be sitting at would they be sitting at the bar? Would they be standing? What's the intention? What does the character want to do? And I try to really embody that, although I don't know because I haven't talked to them, but I try to figure it out from a character perspective. And then I go, okay, if that's what I think they're doing, then how do I capture that? How do I film that? Where do I put the camera to make that the most dynamic? What story am I telling? Whose point of view is it? But it always, to me, starts from the character. And so those little moments like that, and then I made a mistake one time, not intentionally. Same actor. I was directing, and I don't think it wasn't my first episode. So I was comfortable. And it was not
that can get you.
It was not intentional, but I'm standing here having a conversation. And I'm standing here and I'm impassioned. So I'm talking with my hands. I'm standing here. And I just see him like starting to boil. And I'm like, the fuck is happening, whatever.
Right.
And then he goes, don't you ever stand on my mark and tell me how to act it. And I look down and I'm standing on his mark.
Right.
And in his perspective, I wasn't giving him intention. I wasn't giving him, again, early on. So, I'm still learning, but I was probably more telling than talking and trying to, one of the things that I really try to do with actors is that I don't try to ever tell them how to do something. I try to tell them or try to explain to them what the intentions are. Then it's their job to internalize that and make it the character's own, make it their own, because I can't tell them how to do it. And there are times, I have plenty of actors who've said to me, no, just tell me. Just tell me what you want. Tell me how to do it and I will do it. And there's a trust and a rapport because there's a fine line. Like I don't want to get to the place where I'm telling you everything to do because then you're no longer taking ownership and you're no longer making it your own. And you're no longer emoting. You're now just doing. And, but man, I looked down and I was like, oh shit. But it made me, again, it made me it made me understand what he was feeling, even though it was not my intention, but he felt like I was performing. I was standing on his mark and I was acting it out of what I wanted him to do.
Right. It's such a, man, I feel like we should all have psychology degrees, man, to do this job because it's, and I say this on the podcast all the time. Like I in my early apps, I started realizing I'm just going to ask questions because there were a couple times where I might have said like, oh, let's do this. And then an actor was like, no. And I'm like, inside, I'm like, fuck this. You know what I mean? Like just like you can't even try it. You know what I mean? But like sometimes like it's the nudge. It's the nudge with a little bit of a clear intention that maybe they can grab out of the air and alley-oop it or not. But learning that is the hard part.
It is hard. And I think that, look, I think sometimes, I think being transparent and direct is always important, right? Like, I think anytime you can't beat around the bush, and actors will smell bullshit a mile away, and I don't ever try to bullshit anyone, and there are psychological games that, directors play. And, there's things that I've done and, and I've also had, actors say, no, they're not going to do something or whatever. And I'm like, and I don't try. I had an actor once tell me that they weren't going to do something, a specific note, and then I was wrong. And I said, okay. I walked away, and then I came back after the next take and I said, just so you know, cool, I'm wrong. Fine. And you're not going to do it. Get it.
Right.
But just so you know, it's coming across like this when it should be. There was a scene with someone and it was the partner's father, and it was coming across like she was talking to her boyfriend's dad versus her partner's dad.
Right.
It was very different.
Right.
And I said, look, and I didn't know this actor. And people had told me that they're not the easiest person to work with and whatever. And I none of those things I never take those things into account because I like to have my own relationship. But so I just went up afterwards and said, look, because you don't have to like me. I love you, man. I really do. But I don't, if I'm not honest with you, then this is not going to work no matter what. Like, 'cause there's no trust. So I walked up and I said, look, just so you know, it's coming across like this. And I think it should be coming across like this. But this is what it feels like when I watch it. And then she walked away because I'm like, okay, I can't force you.
Right.
I can tell you that it doesn't feel right.
Right.
And so she sat there and I saw her do this. And she said, let's do it again. I said, all right. So we did it again, completely different.
Right.
And then she got out the car and said, thank you. I didn't realize that, or I didn't, but I get it now,
Right.
and that's it. Like, that's what the job is, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, you really are like the person that should be the compass for everyone. You're the compass. But I can't make you do it. But I'm also never ever gonna back off of what I believe and think and feel. But also though, I'm wrong too. Like, there's times where I think like, oh, this should be like this. Then somebody does it, where somebody goes, no, I don't think so. And then they go, let me just do it. Well, all right, do it. And then they do it, and I go, damn, yeah, that's how it should be. Yeah,
I was really wrong.
yeah, like, let's keep doing that. Like,
Right. One more quick question on this. How do you handle giving a note or being asked to give a note coming from a writer or a showrunner or whatever that you don't necessarily agree with?
Well, here's the thing. I'm a believer in the writer-director relationship.
Mhm.
But I'm also a believer that the set is the director's space. The writer had their time. And and I've had this conversation. So this is going to be a little bit, you can tell I'm long-winded at times, but
Nah, it's all good.
we got a long answer
This is great.
because I've had this conversation with writer friends and creator friends. I don't believe a lot. I believe sometimes in the term, I told you my dog's going to bark at some point. So I don't not believe in the term showrunner. I don't think all creators of shows are showrunners. And I think that's a false title for people just to have, because I've been privy to a lot of situations where the person that created the show is not running the show. They're running the writer's room, and they're running what ultimately comes out in terms of story.
Right.
They're not running the show. That's a group of people, including them. It's a team effort. So anyway, but my point being is I've had this conversation with many creators, some showrunners, writers. And the thing you have to realize is this: when we get to that place, that is the director's space. The writers had their turn. And not only have they had, this is the big difference. They had their turn in conceptually in the writer's room for 16 weeks or whatever weeks. Then they had their turn writing the script a month, 2 months before we get it. Then they had their turn when the head writer had their notes. Then they had their turn when the studio had their notes. Then they had their turn when the network had their notes. Then they had their turn when the actor, executive producer had their notes, and et cetera. And then they had their turn when the director had their notes when we're prepping.
Right.
So that script that I get 7 days to prep on a 1 hour, 8 days to 10, 11, 12, 13, sometimes whatever, long run pilots to shoot, they've had months with. I get hours with it to bring it alive. Like, I get the actors for one scene for maybe 3 hours. It's a big scene, 6 hours. It's a small scene, an hour and a half.
Right.
That I got to figure it out in that amount of time without a lot of input from 25 other motherfuckers that are telling me what's wrong with my shit so that I can fix it ahead of time.
Right.
So I appreciate the relationship, and I appreciate the in-depth, what they've gone through with it. But now it's my turn.
Right.
So if there is a note from the writer that I don't agree with, what I generally will do is I will ask for clarification of what's the note behind the note, or what's making them feel like that exactly, right? What is it?
Right.
And then I will, again, like an actor, internalize it, make it my own. How do I make that note my own? And then I will take it to the actor as my own note, not as the writer's note. If I can do that. And if I can't do that, most actors know, because I walk up and I go, and it's not because I'm trying to dime anybody else, just because I can't understand how to articulate because I don't necessarily. And then there's plenty of times where I'll try something, because I'm always down to try. And it's the set. Part of the reason why I said all that is because the set is my space.
Right.
It's my space. So I'm not trying to involve anybody else unless I have to. So I'm going to do my best, because I appreciate this relationship, to understand, internalize it, and then articulate it to get what they're looking for and see if it works. And I'll also tell the writer, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I said, I've also said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing it because I don't think that's right. And I don't think that's right, and whatever else. And then I'll also gone to actors and I said, well, listen, look, this is not my note. This is not. because I don't understand it and I don't know how to tell you. But what they have asked for is this. And I don't know. And then a lot of times the actor will go, wait, what? And then I'll call the writer over. Like, come on, you come explain it.
Right.
I can't explain this.
Yeah, I do that same thing because my eyes will reveal that I'm just
it's not mine.
Yeah, it's not mine. And then if you have a question,
I can't answer it.
Yeah, I can't answer it. And I'm not apt to defend it. So
correct. And
let's
then also
have a party.
The thing about it is this: the director-actor trust relationship is key. My first producing directing job was Fairly Legal with Sarah Shahi. I came in second season. I did an episode the first season. And they had, there's a little bit of some struggling going on, whatever, first season show, whatever. And, someone had said to me that, Sarah doesn't always get along with the directors or something like that, whatever. I'm like, again, I take it with a grain of salt. I don't believe it. I go down the set, I introduce myself. I always give the actors my number and my email and say, look, I know you got the writers. I know you got everybody else, but if you have questions directly about this episode, I'm always available to you. So hit me up after you read it, whenever that is. So anyway, 2 days into filming, I don't think my first day, I don't think she worked the first day. She's the lead of the show. She didn't work the first day. But the second day or whatever it was, she worked. We were about 2 or 3 hours into the show, into this filming. They were halfway through the day. We're shooting on a farm. And she walks up to me and goes, don't fuck this up. That's the reminder of the story when I talked to her. She walks up to me, and mind you, we've known each other 4 hours. She walks up to me and says, don't fuck this up. I went, all right, like, whatever. I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. I'm telling you right now, don't fuck this up. She said, she said, for whatever reason, I trust you. I don't know why, but I trust you. Don't fuck this up. And what she really is saying is that other people hadn't earned her trust.
Right.
Other directors. And for whatever reason, in that short period of time, I was able to. And she didn't want that relationship. She basically said, I'm putting myself into your hands.
Right.
Please don't make me look like a fool. Please protect me. Please, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As the director, as the person that's looking at the person that has the overall big picture, please make sure that it's coming across the way it's supposed to. Right. And I'm relinquishing and trusting you in that sense that you will guide me properly.
Right.
And that was huge.
Yeah.
Because that's the relationship. That's the director-actor relationships. And then I went on the next season to be the producing director on that show. And, we have a great friendship. But that's what, and if you bring someone, if you try to tell someone else's truth, meaning a writer's note, that's not your own, you risk damaging that precious relationship that you have worked so hard to earn from your cast.
Right.
And nothing should get in the way of that.
Right. Well said. Well said. Hey, this is Charles Murray, executive producer of Outer Range. You're listening to Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon.
Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook, is Pete Chatmon's book from Michael Weasley Productions. What started in 1993 has been a marathon of persistence and creative pivots, transitioning from indie filmmaker to teaching at NYU's acclaimed film school, to running a production company, to directing television and commercials, and ultimately eyeing a return to the feature films that gave him his start. A mixture of how-to, self-help, and inspiration. This book is for any person targeting a successful career in the creative arts. Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook from Michael Weasley Productions, is available on Amazon and anywhere else you get your books. Don't forget about your local mom and pop shops, people.
Monk was 2003 to 2009. Fairly Legal was 2011, 2012. Now you're in the producing director position. Like, what does the next few years look like? Like, how do you get to the point where you're now doing, so many different shows, The Blacklist, CSI, Cyber, The Last Ship, Notorious Bones Training Day. This is now 2017. Like, what's that period, I guess, from 2009 to 2017? How are you making these inroads and growing your career?
It looks much better on paper. But the truth of the matter is this. Look, I think even now to this day still, I think I've directed over 100 hours of TV, or maybe close, like produced over 200 hours of TV. I still have to find new inroads. And what that really means is this: when I did Monk, it was like, great, you've done episodes of your own show, your family show, whatever. You need to do something outside. I do something outside of it. Oh, but it's still for the same network. Oh, you need something for a different network. Okay, great. So I do something for a different network. Okay, great. But that was a comedy. This is an action.
Right.
Before I did Chuck, I'd met on it 3 years before I did it. And I hadn't done action. And think about it, of course, to let you do action if you haven't done action. So how do you do action when you haven't done it and nobody lets you do it because you haven't done it? So that's the process, right? And again, patience, right? So I had a bunch of general meetings from '07 to 2012, even beyond that. Just saying, from really like '08 to like 2011, I had all these meetings, the studios, networks, all this stuff, like, blah, 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 and nothing came.
Right.
I'd go back 2 years later, every year, I'd go meet with the same executive or whatever for 3 years, 4 years, not getting hired by any of those people. A lot of the hires that I had were by relationships I had made as an AD, and people who were in producer director positions who valued what I had done for them as an AD, saw that I was directing and trusted me, But what ended up happening was those general meetings, all the things that over that 3 years that felt like things were slow. I mean, they were slow. I was working. Look, I can't even lie. They weren't really slow. Again, I've been very blessed and fortunate that I've never been not working, but they paid off later. That's laying foundations, right? Because as you get another credit, as someone else hires, you get another thing, you do something different. Those people that were meeting go like, oh shit, this motherfucker's really doing stuff.
Right,
and then they start being willing to let you do things.
Plus, you got to do your part. It's almost like, what comes to mind is that, what was it, LBJ or JFK telling, Martin Luther King, make me have to do this. Like, I need you to go make it so I can sign this legislation.
That's right.
Because these jobs, man, I tell my friends that aren't in the biz or folks that are trying to get into it, like, every time I walk on set and I see my name on a chair, or if it just says director, I'm like, this shit is Game of Thrones to get in that chair.
That's right.
And it takes a minute.
100%. 100%. And then it also takes like, look, people advocating for you. It's interesting, man. So when Blackish first started, Kenya Barris and I went to junior high together, right? And so we've known each other for a long time. We have lots of people in common, et cetera, et cetera. We were never like best friends, but we've known each other. Like, we're friends, and when that first got picked up, he called me and said, yo, my show, we're making the pilot. It's going to get picked up. Can you come do it? And I was doing Suits at the time. And I was like, dude, I don't know if I can, I'm doing Suits, whatever. He's like, all right. And then it turned out where I could do an episode, second to last episode of the first season. Right. But prior to that, after the pilot got picked up, and I don't know, and I don't want to put words in people's mouth, whatever, but, I remember him telling me something to the effect of, he had a group of people he wanted to hire. I remember him going to ABC with a group of people, whatever, and them being like, nah, you got to hire all these people in terms of directors. They're people that they knew and felt comfortable with, because it's a new show. And this is the first show that she's doing on his own. And they want to surround him with people that they feel comfortable with, whatever. And he had a group of Black directors and other directors and everything else. He's like, but like, these are the people that I want, And they, basically told him like, no.
Right.
And it's funny, like, look now, 10 years later, motherfuckers, they say, no more. Turn real quick. But, but this is the process, right?
Right.
And so and what ended up happening from what he told me is that after they said no, he again, I don't want to tell his story, but my understanding is that he went away, sort of like, damn, this is fucked up. This is my shit. I thought I could do what I want, but this is politics of the game, right? And then he went in and he said he went in with my resume and was like, wait a minute, why can't I hire him?
Right.
He's done this show. He's done this show. He's done this show. He's been a producer. Da, da, da. See, ABC had never hired me before.
Right.
I'd never done an ABC show. I'd been directing for 7 years or whatever it was, 5 years. I've been doing 1 hour. I've been doing a half hour. I've been doing comedies. I've been doing action. They had never hired me. I wasn't on the list. And there are lists. People don't believe it, but there are. And in the list, I understand. I hire directors.
Right.
Right. I'm in a position where I hire directors, and you have to. You're putting a shit ton of responsibility in somebody's hands, and you want to be comfortable and confident that they're going to execute, because it's a big responsibility and a lot of fucking money.
Right.
Right. And there's a lot.
And you ain't trying to sign yourself up for a headache. Like that's literally a self-imposed headache. If you
correct. I don't want to get into the editing room and it's all fucked up. Or every single day the actors are complaining to me about how bad this is about someone that I hired. I understand all of those things, right? So I understand why there are lists. I do. I really do. And I understand why people want to hire people that they're comfortable with. I get all that. And so anyway, through that though, they agreed. They agreed. And very quickly, it became them wanting to hire me for all kinds of stuff. And it took that one person going in and fighting. It also took, like you said, my part. It took the resume that I had, and it took that moment coming together to open up a bunch of other doors, And so, like, I'm forever grateful for that. I'm forever grateful for Kenya, in terms of that. But it wasn't just Kenya. It was also, like you said, it was the work, the foundation that I had put in, to be able to be in the position where they could not deny it.
Right.
They couldn't say no. Because if they said no, what the fuck does that look like?
Right.
Are you able to hire me?
Right. Well, and it's brilliant that you were carving out a career where you had, it's almost like it's like a defensive. It's like going on the offensive to be defensive. So when they come and say, he has done an action. Okay, damn, it's going to be hard. That can't be the reason. It's a sci-fi. Oh shit, he's shot in the volume. Okay, you know what I mean? It's like being smart enough to build a resume that can give you some cover, for the realities of how some executives are making their decisions.
Yeah. And that's another, just because you touched on it. Sometimes saying no is the best thing you can do. I think early in your career, I think you want to say yes. I think, unless it's something that just feels really off, but you want to be hired back. You want to me, saying yes to a second or third episode is sometimes better than saying no to a second episode and yes to something new, because if it looks like you just bounce around, it's like nobody's rehiring.
Right.
And I have a bunch of one-offs, but my one-offs are different because of the fact that I'm producing a lot, I'm doing pilots a lot. So I get an episode, I squeeze an episode in. I said it's Saturday morning. That's we doing this,
Right.
But you squeeze an episode in when you can, and then you may not be able to come back. And they want you to come back, but my schedule doesn't allow it. But when you're starting off, and also too, but within that, make sure your team knows what it is you want. And I don't know. Again, I'm transparent, so I don't know if this will come off good or bad, but I really don't give a fuck. When I first started, I told my agents, I was very fortunate. I had a lot of friends in the business by this time. I've been pulling for me. And I met with like the top 3 at the time, William Morris, CAA, ICM. I met with some boutique agencies and everything else. And almost every agency said, we're going to get you on Bernie, all the black shows that were shooting. We're going to get you on Bernie Mac. We're going to get you on this. We're going to get you on that. And I didn't go with any of them.
Right.
Because I had seen in the past, and it's different now, because of the fact that the world is so much more open in terms of shows and content for us. But what I saw was, if you did a Bernie Mac, all you did was a Bernie Mac.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm a storyteller. I want to tell all stories. Like, we tell stories about motherfucking aliens. I ain't never met no alien. Like, I don't know what an alien feels. I gotta make that shit up. Right. So so my point was this. I want to tell all stories. And so it's important to me to get representation that said, all right, Yes, I want to do Bernie Mac. I want to do Everybody Hates Chris. I want to do that. But at the same time, I want to do, the starter wife, Bones, Last Ship. Like, I don't
Right.
want to do just one thing, because then people will put you inside of a box. So it wasn't for me, like, it wasn't about denying the Bernie Mac shows of the world. It was about what can I do in addition to, if all you're saying is, hey, there's 5 Black shows on the air and we can
Right.
get you on all 5 Black shows because you Black.
Right.
Well, that's a problem.
Right. And that's got an expiration date.
And also too, like, oh, so because I'm Black, I don't know how to tell other stories.
Right.
I don't want to not do the Black shows. Trust me. Like, that's my favorite part. But
Right. Nah, I feel you, man. So talk about getting into pilots. Any distinction that you want to mention between like doing episodic and doing a pilot? And on top of that, like how you landed your first one, because that's always a big milestone for a director.
yes. And the distinction really is this is world creating.
Mhm.
And that also goes a little bit into features now, right? So, but let's just stick with television. When you are going in to direct an episode of TV, you're stepping into a world that's already created. You're stepping into someone else's house. You are a guest. You are coming in, and what I always say is this: when I'm directing an episode of television, every episode fits into a box.
Right.
This is the show. The show fits in this box. My job on that episode is to push the walls of those boxes and expand them as far as I can without them tearing, ripping, or falling, right? Because I need to deliver this box to you.
Right.
But how do I make this box special?
Right.
How can I push it without it feeling like I don't ever want to feel like it left the box.
Right.
So that's an episode of TV to me. That's how you make a great episode. Now, with a pilot, you're creating the world. So you decide if it's a handheld show. You decide if it's Dolly. You decide if it's, everything is locked off. You decide if there's tons of coverage or no coverage. You have to come up with a visual palette. You are, along with your producing partners, you are hiring the cast. You are
Right.
deciding what the character looks like, what they feel like. Then you're going out for that. You're laying the whole template for everyone to follow if you do it right. Like, there are plenty of pilots where things have changed. I've even shot pilots where we've reshot 3/4 of the pilot because we either recast or
Right.
didn't like that or something like that, but the concept worked. And, that's part of the process sometimes. So that to me is really the exciting part of a pilot, is that you really get to, it's also the scariest part.
Hmm.
Because it's, all on your shoulders.
Yeah, there's no cover. This is you.
This is you can't, and look, I've done 6 pilots and 6 have gotten picked up. So I feel very proud of that.
Right.
Somebody called me the pilot whisperer the other day. I was like, I don't know if I'm quite that yet, but I'm trying to get there. But I think that they're all special and unique in their own way. Like Pearson's spinoff, which I didn't do the show. And that's the other thing. Sometimes I stay on and produce a show. Sometimes you do the pilot, you
Mhm.
birth it, and then you walk away. And then you
Right.
don't have any control over what the show becomes. Like,
Right.
if I don't stay on as in a creative entity, and like the Pearson pilot was embedded in Suits, but I wanted to make sure it felt different, but it was a part of the Suits, world. But we went to Chicago and I shot it very differently than Suits normally would, where Suits is shiny and slick and all this stuff. Pearson, I went all handheld. I went very dark and that very undertone. It's Chicago. Like, how does the location influence, the look and tone of the field? And again, that was that was organic because I had done the show. I don't think I was still a producer on the show. I only did 3 seasons and then left. I wasn't a producer on the show. So I came back to do that. And then you look at something like, LA's Finest, where that's a Bruckheimer property.
Right.
We got Jessica Alba and Gabrielle Union, and it's a Bruckheimer property. It's based off the Bad Boys movies. So now it's like going in and like, damn, there's a lot of responsibility because there's going to be comparison. And, you go in and that was it. How do you land a pilot? Well, you got to do the work first to get the meeting, or have your team, play up to get the meeting. And I'd done, again, foundation, relationships. I'd done 2 Bruckheimer shows. I think I directed Training Day and CSI Cyber or something. I think that was at that point my only relationship, but that left enough of an impact for them to want to meet me for this. So I was directing an episode of Blackish. They wanted to meet on the Friday. I couldn't meet on the Friday because I was shooting. And so they asked if we could meet on Sunday. I said, cool. Now, this has all happened this fast.
Yeah.
So I never forget, Saturday, I spent 12 hours on my computer putting together a pitch deck. I had never done one by myself before, ever.
Right.
Now, I don't know graphic design. I don't know Photoshop. I don't know whatever, but I figured that shit out. I spent about 14 hours actually. And I forget, I got finished the whole book and it was good. The whole deck, the whole pitch. And got to the end, I was like, something's missing. And it was just something bugging me, right? And I'd read the script, something's missing. And I put together this last page real quick, right? I had to put it together, printed these things out of Kinko's, took it in, had the meeting, boom, 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 doing the meeting, going through all the pages, talking it through. I'm meeting with the Bruckheimer executives and the writer, creators, the two Brandons. And I get to the last page and I go, but at the end of the day, this show is really about family. Last page was about, I had Martin and Will, I had their families. And one of the things I put on there that to me, when I put this deck together of how it's supposed to look and the location and all the stuff, but there was this picture of in Bad Boys 2 when Will shows up with the donut for his ass at the door and he's looking through it and whatever. And it's like that moment in the doorway.
Right.
And I talked about that. And then you leave. And then I get hired up. And then the Brandons who wrote it came up to me and said, just so you know, what did it for us was that last page. The entire time we wrote the pilot, that was the scene we referenced. Holding up that donut. And they said that was literally that we printed a picture of it. We had it on our wall. That was the thing. And, so you go in and you pitch and you try to, again, we're storytellers, man.
Right.
Nothing makes sense if you don't connect to the story. I've read plenty of pilots. The reason why there are people telling me I should direct a movie for 10 years. I just did the first movie last year. And part of it was because I'd read scripts and there was a couple movies I went up for that I didn't get. It ain't like I go and, go up for something and get everything I go up for. But the thing was, I hadn't read anything or found anything that felt like I wanted to tell that story. It felt that I have to feel, I said before my first pilot, I said no to a bunch of scripts that were sent to me.
Right.
Like I'm not going to go pitch on it. And most people go like, you got an opportunity to do a pilot, go pitch on it.
Yeah.
But I didn't connect.
Yeah. And you just gotta make yourself look horrible because I learned that early. I remember I took one meeting in the stage of the job or the career where you're like, I'm just trying to get jobs. And I remember the feedback being, he didn't really seem that interested, and I was like, I wasn't, cause when you are, it's apparent, it comes through and you just end up making yourself seem like maybe that's just your demeanor. You're too cool and laid back. And then that'll be the word about Anton Cropper. It's not at all.
And I didn't want, look, man, I made that mistake. So I made that mistake. You learn from your mistakes, man. Like that's nothing. You can't bat 1,000, man. You can't, you can't win all the time. It just doesn't happen. I had an opportunity for a pilot and I don't think I had done a pilot yet. Yeah, and I hadn't done one yet. And it was something I was excited about. I read the script. I was like, yo, I could tell this story. I met with the writers. They were great. They were on board. It was like, boom, we had dinner. It was like, oh, this is fantastic. And it was for a network. It was for, USA, who I'd done a bunch of stuff with. And I knew everybody. And it was like, yo, the synergy. And they were like, okay, come in and meet with us and whatever. I said, all right, great. Never done it before. And so I was really mad at my team because I was like, what do I need to? They're like, no, just go meet, like whatever. I said, all right, cool. I didn't know. And they didn't tell me. I'm mad at them. I walk in, fucking like Rob Reiner's there, like the president of the network's there, like like all these motherfuckers in the conference room, and they're like, and I walk in and I'm thinking like, oh, I already have meetings, the writers. It's like, boom, this is like the,
we closing the deal.
Right. And they all look at me like, okay. And I all look at them like, okay. And they look at me like, okay. And I'm like, all right. And they're like, well, so tell us. And I tell them a couple of things, whatever, but I didn't have a pitch. And the writers are like, oh, tell them that thing you told us at the dinner. Like they're having, pull it
Right.
out of me, right?
Right.
And then I had no book. I had nothing. And Rob Ryder gets up and goes to the other room because I was talking about like some workshop stuff. And he's like, you should really come in with something. At least none else goes up the room, gets a book of like 60 costumes or something like that.
Right.
He's like, he said, at least come in with like, something. I'm like, now I'm like fucking just mortified.
Right.
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 Because I'm just like, I've completely shit the bed.
Yeah.
Like, but again, I asked, I was like, am I like, what is this meeting? And they said, no, I just need to go in. And I was like, okay, again, underprepared.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as good as my relationship with that network was, I never had another pilot meeting with them ever.
Yeah.
I'm in this room with all these people and I was so unprepared.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was supposed to do all those things. I had a feeling. They said, no, this is not like that meeting. I said, I got fucked, and it is what it is. But
now you got to process, you know what I mean? And now you could probably got a little bit of a, not, I don't want to say template because that minimizes the creativity, but I imagine you got some kind of template. So when you have to make a deck in 14 hours, you at least know what you want it to look and feel like. It's a from scratch deal every time.
Every time.
Mm.
Every time it's from scratch. Every time, which is painful. You see me sides, I actually have to do one this week, and I just did one last week. But every time, like I let the story dictate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I sit there and I read that script and I read that script and I read that script and I start to think about it and I start to visualize and I start thinking about what does it feel like to me? And again, like some things feel like, yo, this should really be like handheld and frenetic and in your face. And
Right.
other things feel like I want to sit back and have scales. I mean, I always like having scale and scope, but I want this to be more architectural and more like this. And yes, I mean, like, and I again, comes back to this. I get bored, right? So maybe some of my pitch decks have looked similar, but
Right.
none of them are the same. Or no, that's not even true. Cause like I pitched with writers and like, it's a completely different animal than, and the whole layout and structure is different. Sometimes I start with characters. Sometimes I start with location. Sometimes I start with the look. Sometimes I start with it's just the material dictates everything. The story dictates everything.
Right. Yeah, man. This is all the behind the scenes stuff that people have no clue, and every time it's always immediately due, and you got to find a way to make it work.
It's awful and unfortunate, you get the phone call like on Wednesday that they want to meet with you on Friday or Monday. And I have now I'm I guess in a fortunate place, whatever, where I'm like, I can't do Friday. Well, we can do it Monday or whatever. Like, but Friday's just too soon. I won't be ready, and I had that happen with this one that's coming up where I think it would have been just more of a general conversation. Same thing. I met with an executive. We had a very general conversation. I think I was supposed to just meet with the president or owner of the company. And I think it was just supposed to be general, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't want that same thing that happened to me. I said, am I supposed to be, it was like 2 days later. And I was like, am I supposed to like have a thing ready? And they were like, no, we don't think so. And I was like, nope. No. Let's push this out. So it got pushed a week and a half or whatever it is. But yeah, I've been in that same position. It was like, nah, they gotta they're making a decision on Wednesday. It's Thursday. You got to meet with them on Monday.
Yeah.
You got to put some shit together. You have to literally put together the entire concept of a series in 72 hours.
Right.
From look, who you would cast, what it feels like, tone of it. Is it, how do you bring out the thing that's in the script? Like, what is it like this? And I mean, just like, so yeah, but look, man, shit, if it was easy,
Yeah. So, all right. So what's up next for you, man? Like, are you right now, you got TV, you got feature films. I imagine you could go do a music video if you still wanted to, what is the next few months looking like for you?
I'm a little bit upset because I had a commercial thing that was going to happen and then it conflicted with the date for something else that I was already committed to. And now I see those commercials on TV and I could have done them better. Dude, I mean, they just, could have done them better. Anyway, so look, what you just asked me, I get asked in every single meet. I still have general meetings with
Yeah.
companies and people. And like, yes, I say no to a lot of work, which I'm fortunate about, but it's a constant of building connections and layers. And that question comes up a lot. What's next? And, I'm blessed. I have irons in the fire. There's pots on the stove that are boiling. Some I
Yeah.
just put water in. Some are, about to bubble over. You never know what's going to hit. I have a project that I thought we were making, and yesterday we got the call that it's on hold. They were about to start a writer's room on Monday, and the Thursday night it got put on hold. And literally, they're going in the room on Monday, and it may still happen, but that's how this business works. And so, what's next for me is honestly whatever comes along that has a strong story, that has strong characters. I don't know.
Right.
I'm about to go and direct an episode of BMF that I'm really excited about. It's their big mid-season swing turn of events. I've never done an episode of that, but I really like the show.
Right.
I like working on things. Sometimes you have to work on things that you don't know anything about. Sometimes you have to work on things you don't like.
Mm.
And sometimes you work on things that you really are excited about, and
Right.
that's part of it. And I'm excited about this. But sometimes you're very pleasantly surprised. You work on something you think you're not going to like, and you go like, fuck, I would do 10 more of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't know. We'll see what comes. Like, there's always something. There's I made a conscious effort this year to leave my schedule wide open. Since I finished the movie, we finished filming last June. It came out in November. I did 2 episodes last year between June and December of something. And then otherwise, I'm not booked at all. And this is the first time in my life. Like I've been at points where I've done 13 episodes of TV in one calendar year. And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And outside of this BMF, I have a wide open calendar, and it is a very freeing feeling.
Yeah. Well, that means good things are going to fill it in, man.
And that's what we're praying for.
Whenever you just go for the calendar fill, there's always 1 or 2 things that pop up and you're like,
man,
yeah.
That happened to me with Succession, man. I was like, there was a Succession that popped up and couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's happened with a lot of stuff, but that one really broke my heart. But there's a bunch of stuff that's, and that's part of it. Like, you got to be able to, it's tough navigating, man, and look, Samuel Jackson figured it out. He said yes to everything and it's worked for him, you know? So sometimes maybe that's the answer. And there's plenty of other people I know that, do a couple projects here and there, but say no a lot. And I don't know how they financially survive, but they figured that shit out.
Right. So here's the last couple questions, round and third here. What are 3 traits you think somebody needs to make it in this industry?
Humility, tenacity. I think I put talent and skill in one as one.
Now, how are you making a distinction between talent and skill, or?
I think in some ways they're the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a difference in skill sets. You can have different skills, but I guess to me, in some ways they're the same. There's variance between them, but you have to have some sort of talent. But I can be incredibly talented at something, but if I don't have the skill to actually implement that talent, then it doesn't really do anyone any good.
It's so interesting too, because everything you're saying is like, it's almost like you gotta be left brain, right brain. You gotta be like, sensitive thug. You know what I mean? Like you got to kind of learn how to be malleable and exist in whatever circumstance arises. The final question I normally ask of actors that I chat with, but I'm interested in hearing what you would say. Being a person who does pilots and features. If you were making a film about your life, or I don't want to lead. If you were making a project about your life, who would star in it?
Oh shit!
Who would direct it? What genre would it be in? And would it be, and what medium, TV, film, whatever, documentary?
All right, first of all, I can't answer the first one because I'm going to tell you my Achilles heel.
All right.
Jay-Z's Achilles heel is love. He don't get enough of it. Mine is actors. I cannot tell you actor names. I cannot tell you what they've been in. I cannot tell you what. Now, you show me a picture, I go, oh, that motherfucker. Yeah, I know that dude. I know that
Yeah.
girl. Like, yeah. But you start telling me names, I'm like, I'll know 3 out of 20. So I don't know who the fuck the star is. Some cool motherfucker. Somebody good. Shit.
Right.
Who would direct it? Oof, ouch, man. That's there's a lot of controversial answers to this one. Okay, and this is gonna answer your very first question. I think it is because now I just came back to see,
Okay.
I got a full circle. Pulp Fiction, I think, was the movie that affected me the most.
Mm-hmm.
And Pulp Fiction was a film that to this day is probably one of my absolute favorites.
It holds up. That shit holds up.
It holds up. It was so smart. And the way there's so many stories interwoven into one film and the way they connect and tie in, even though they're so disconnected. I think that movie impacted me
Right.
as a filmmaker and wanting to be a storyteller.
Hmm.
So for me, I think I'd have to say Quentin Tarantino.
All right.
And it's a really hard question because there's so many great directors, but because I think that, and I think my story, I think it would be a film.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot. When I look back at it, like I had my own nightclub when I was 19. I've tour managed, I've done music videos. I've traveled the world. I've done just a lot of different things. I sold cars. I worked at the mall.
Right.
I've been involved in some things I shouldn't be involved in, et cetera, et cetera. So, I had a very different sort of upbringing in terms, like you say, I grew up in the hood, but shit, still traveled to Europe every other summer,
Right.
so I knew how to navigate a lot. And so I love the idea of someone who can blend a lot of different stories and a lot of different things into one thing. And some things, man, there's some things that may seem extreme or sensationalized that I've lived through that are
Right.
real. And I think
Right.
that he has an ability to push things, and I'm a big believer in my motto in everything I do is soar or fall flat on my face trying. I
Right.
never want to be mediocre, I
Right.
mean, and that means different things to different people, but for me, I that's where I want to be. So anyway, I think those are the right answers.
Yeah.
I mean, the other answer is Spike Lee, right? And the reason why I didn't go with Spike Lee, but shit, you know what the other answer is? Me, motherfucker. I direct. Yeah, hold on a second. Let's back on this
Yo,
up.
that's gotta be crazy. You can't be giving a note to no actor talking about that ain't
let's
it.
back this up. I would direct that shit. Hold up now.
Well, in that case, you really could stand on the mark and be like, nah, it's more like this.
Yeah, but no, Spike, look, and the reason why, look, I love people who think outside the box and are willing to take risks and willing to tell stories. And he knows and he understands, Black stories so well. Well, reason why, honestly, because I think the reason why I went to Tarantino is because I want my shit to be outlandish. You know what I mean? I want that shit. I mean, like, and not really outlandish. It because some of this shit really happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, but there will be shootouts. There will
Yes.
be things. There will be things that feel like could that happen?
Right.
And so I think Spike ends up on the more drama and character side of it. So
And you want to make sure the audience comes to the film able to digest wherever this story goes.
correct. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, man, that's some good questions, Pete.
Hey, man, I try to get one in every interview.
So look, I know you interviewing me, but I'm gonna throw that back at you.
Oh shit.
Spain, please.
I've never thought about it. I had the question a long time ago. That's a good question. Never thought about it. Okay, shit. All right. Actor. Who would play? Because then it's like, I guess they should look like you a little bit. Huh. All right, I'm gonna come back to that. I'll pick.
That's hard, isn't it?
It's really hard, man. Director, damn. All of it stuff, but I would probably go with Soderbergh.
Yeah. A sunburn's great. I get that.
Yeah.
Get that.
And I think it would be episodic. And I think it would, I love what he does with, at least as of late, right? He's been taking these true stories
Yeah.
and they're things you don't really know about, but it feels like he's probably getting them sold because they're somewhat IP-ish or coming from.
Yep.
And then you could pivot, and then he pivots. Like the whole thing with no sudden move.
Yeah.
With like I was like, oh, this is real shit, you know? Like, so something like that where you're kind of in a genre that you kind of understand, and then you flip it a little bit. And to me, it's kind of like this kind of journey of just like, you know, I was thinking about this when you said it as we've been talking. I was like, it's interesting that, you know, I think we had some of the same principles and perspective and hustle guiding our respective journeys. The main difference perhaps being that you were kind of maneuvering through different spaces and then like kind of climbing, ascending, getting to that peak, and then saying, okay, like I've done this and I want to go over here. And for me, it was like I was trying to direct since 1993. So I had this fucking tunnel vision that maybe is more has a certain kind of pain to it when it takes so long before you ever get there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you got and you got to, man. I mean, I've had to calibrate my fucking levels so many times because like there was just a point where I was like recognizing I was becoming bitter. You know, I was like,
I get that. I've been there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like being able to like take that and put that into some narrative that we understand, but put a little different sauce on it.
It'd be a dark drama.
Dark drama, yeah. I know. And
dark drama love story.
Actor is tough, dog. Like that's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. But this is let's now. I'm gonna bring it back to this because that's what casting a show is like. You sit there and you go and you sit there and you try to think about who it could be or what it could be. And of course, there's all these big names. You think, yeah, they could do it. They don't audition those. So you're like, okay, yeah, I don't know what that would be like, but yeah, let's give that a shot. But then people that do come and audition, and I get actors not wanting to audition because they've reached a certain level and you know that they're capable. But when people come in and audition and read, so many times you don't know what you're looking for. You can't say, oh, this person. There are roles you go, that person would be perfect. And there's other times you go, I don't know what this is or who this character is or whatever. If somebody walks in the room and they just blow you away. And then, you know, and they just go, oh, it's like Ronald Flynn in fantasy football who plays Anderson Fisher, AF.
Right.
And I knew what I was looking for, but I had no clue. I went through, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 audition tapes, whatever. As soon as he popped on the screen, bam. There was no questions. I made the phone call. I said, y'all figure this shit out because this is it. This is the guy. Like, and there is nobody else. This is the guy. And sometimes that's just it. But when we as directors go into a project, it's not always like, oh, it's not always like, this is the guy we know ahead of time. Sometimes we have to see it, or sometimes someone has to bring someone up or whatever it is. And then you go, oh yeah, that could work, or that could be interesting. You know? Anyway.
You know, I will say, and now, again, this, you made a great point because now this thing I'm going to say can piggyback off of that. I've been thinking, well, who looks like me? Right. And while I'm thinking that, I'm also thinking like, well, Denzel didn't look like fucking Malcolm X.
Right.
At all.
Bingo.
But as that thing went on, you were like, that's him. Right. So if I had to answer, I would offer Rami Malek.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? But the look ain't one to one. But I think, you know, nobody know who I am anyway. So it could be whatever.
Oh, they go know though. They go know. I get that though. That's yeah. I mean, that's what we do also in movie magic, right? We if we do it right, the audience will believe whatever we tell them.
Exactly.
You know, and that's part of the job, you know, is that, you know, we again, I mean, maybe some people have seen aliens. I haven't, but I could tell you a fucking story about the aliens and make you believe they real.
Exactly. Well, look, on that note, man, there's a lot to believe and learn from in what you shared today. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time And also, you've hired me in the past. So, appreciate you bringing me on Long, Slow Exhale, man.
I mean, of course.
And yeah, looking forward to watching everything you do.
And hopefully, you'll hire me. You're in that position, where you're doing, and that's the thing. Like, again, it's a lot of relationships. And, you hire people because you think they're right and they're good, and projects come along, and then you go, oh, this person will be great, or like whatever. And it's part of the joy, and I love being able to work for people that I admire and work for people who I've seen come up and, deserve it. And it makes you want to do your best, and the person at the top is deserving of being there. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, fam. All right. Anton Cropper,
man.
people.
Yo.
What's up, people? This is Pete Chatmon. Follow me on Instagram and on Twitter via @PeteChatmon. Follow the pod on Facebook on our Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon official page, and hit up our mailbag with questions, suggestions, or hey, donations if you're feeling like it via Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon @gmail.com. And just in case you need to know how to spell it, that's Pete with the last name Chatmon. All right, y'all. That was episode 49 with Anton Cropper. Hope you enjoyed. As I said before, this will conclude season 3. Looking forward to coming back to y'all with new episodes soon. Stay tuned to, the platform via @Pete Chatmon on IG or Twitter, or @Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon on Instagram. And the updates will be coming your way, so you'll know what's what and when and why and how and who and all of that. And in the meantime, y'all, I appreciate you supporting the podcast. If you like it, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. For those of you who have supported the book, man, leave a review, give a rating on Amazon. These things mean a lot. And as all of you know, I sit back and I do this on my own time, own money, own effort, because I really value the demystification of this entertainment industry and the processes that we can all take, at least, those who are really in pursuit of it, to reach our goals. I've never believed in this idea of movie magic. I think there's a ABC 1, 2, 3 to where you begin to create the most compelling, difficult, mind-blowing scene ever. And I just want as many people as possible to be aware of what those processes are. So if you like what you hear, if you like what you read, kindly spread the word. I appreciate you. And as always, stay safe, spread love, and keep creating.